So we're going to go over hot glue today and my expectations for my students, and maybe some teachers will be sharing this with their students as well. So hot glue is a really great tool to be using, but there are some dangers associated with it that we need to pay attention to. Some hot glue guns will have a little setting on there where you can be high or low setting. It can go anywhere from 200 degrees up to 450 degrees. And if you get the glue on your skin, it stays there and you can get a really deep burn. So it's probably helpful to have some cool water nearby that you can dip your finger in really quickly just in case you have an accident. But it isn't instant. So I've got to plug it in and we got to wait about 5 or 10 minutes for the hot glue to heat up. And you don't want it to just be anywhere. You want to protect your table because if it gets on the table, it's a real pain to clean because it's sticky. So if you have a pad, a silicone pad, that can be a great place to put your glue gun. So in case it drips out, it'll collect there and then you can peel that off and throw it away. Or at the very least, some paper under your surface area. Another kind of paper that works really well is parchment paper, the kind they use for baking. And you can actually take the hot glue and draw on it, right on the parchment paper, kind of like in this picture, they wrote the word love, and then that can become a stencil that you can use later on. So hot glue is kind of this cool thing. It isn't for everything though. Like if I broke my glasses and I needed to glue a part together, it's not gonna hold. Hot glue doesn't stick to shiny stuff really well. So if something is slick, like the plastic on my glasses, it doesn't like to stick to that. It likes to stick to things like that have kind of a rougher surface, like cardboard. It's excellent for cardboard. So I've got some cardboard here. And if I just want to glue two pieces together, I can go ahead and put some hot glue on the edge carefully. And I pull the trigger on the glue to kind of activate it. And you saw it dripped right there onto my pad. And then I go ahead and put it where I want it and I hold it there and it doesn't dry, it cools and hardens. That's kind of a neat thing about it. But it doesn't do it instantly, but it does it fairly quickly. Now you'll notice that I didn't put my finger on the edge to catch any of the excess glue. So if I did have any excess, like let's say I put some here and I got just, you know, it's like a big blob and I don't want that there. So what I could do instead is don't use your finger because you'll burn it. You could take a popsicle stick and then press that along the edge and that'll help push down the glue. A popsicle stick, if it burns, we don't care. And we've got plenty of those that you can use, or a piece of cardboard or something other than your finger because a finger is really gonna hurt. Now, the other thing you need to be aware of is if you're going to be gluing foam or foam products, if you have the setting on high, which I do right now, it will actually melt through the foam. And you can see that it's going right into that. And when it does that, it burns the foam and there's some gases that come out of the foam that are really not good. Now I have excellent ventilation in this room and we can turn that on and ventilate things, but you really don't want to be breathing that. So if you're going to be using foam, you want to set it on low. But what if you have a glue gun that doesn't have a high and low setting and it's just hot all the time? Actually, you can unplug it, wait a couple seconds, and then use it on the foam. So if I do this directly on the foam, let me see if you can see that here. You can see it's actually going to start melting into the foam and ruining the surface. So this isn't going to stick really well. So I want to wait for it to cool down or move it to the low setting here, wait a few minutes, and then I can use it on foam and it'll work really good. The other thing you need to be aware of is that because it's so hot, it can burn through things that are, you know, easy to burn through, like yarn that's made of acrylic. This yarn, if I put that against there, it actually starts to melt the yarn and it'll ruin it. So some products are not going to work well with hot glue. So you may need to test it ahead of time or check with your teacher. Is hot glue the best thing to be using? We do some sculpture building and we'll use some metal bits and parts and recycled stuff. If you're using something that's metal, metal transfers heat very, very well. So you want to make sure that if you're putting some hot glue on here, even if you're holding it from a little bit of a distance away, that heat can travel and burn you. So you'll need to be aware of that if you're using anything like metal with hot glue. Now, metal is kind of shiny, so it might not stick. You might have to test it out before you work on it. This is kind of a mesh. It'll go into the mesh and it'll stick really well for this stuff. The other thing that hot glue is not really good for is plaster. So if I glue things onto the plaster, plaster is very dusty on its surface and the dust kind of pulls off, so that hot glue is not going to be very permanent. Now, if I cover the plaster with like a tissue mache and then I hot glue on it, it'll work really well. So you have to be aware of those kinds of things. Sometimes hot glue is the best thing to use and sometimes it's not. You would think it'd be really good on paper, but you know, Elmer's glue is better on paper, or maybe even rubber cement would be better for paper. So it's not always the best thing, even if it will work. The last thing to be aware of is you can't use hot glue against anything that is slightly wet or moist. So again, with the plaster, if the plaster is dry, it will kind of work on it, but if the plaster has any moisture in it at all, it won't stick at all. So you've got to make sure that the surfaces are totally dry because water sort of repels the hot glue. So those are my tips and tricks for hot glue. The last thing is you want to make sure that when you're done, you unplug it because we don't want to catch the classroom on fire. So that's it. If you do get yourself burned, you get a little glue on your skin, put it into cold water right away and let the teacher know so we can get you a Band-Aid or send you to the nurse to just have it looked at. Have a great day and make sure you subscribe to see more of my lessons.